Good evening, folks. Every day I'm reading from this book by Jadurani Dasi, and it's called The Art of Spiritual Life. She was the author of many paintings, illustrations in books by Srila Prabhupada, and this is her memoirs. And we're reading through the chapter that is called 1966 Genie on a Magic Carpet. Lord and the Ocean. Prabhupada had personally given me a maroon silk sari just the day before I was wearing it now for the first time. I didn't know yet how to properly put it on, although the hem was supposed to come down below my ankles, and I danced it rode up to the middle of my calves, while the upper part was so slippery that it kept sliding off my shoulder. I decided it wasn't practical to wear, except on special occasions. After this morning class, Prabhupada invited me to come to his quarters, where he brought me to see an Indian print of Dashavatar, famous throughout India as the 10 incarnations of Krishna. Krishna's four-armed expansion as Lord Vishnu stood in the center, surrounded by 10 other small figures. Oh. Yes, I guess it would be better to do it like this. Yep. The artist's rendition of Lord Vishnu was soft and gentle, as though done with the airbrush. Vishnu's hair was a curly, bluish-black. His skin the light bluish color of a fresh rain-cloud. He wore an opulent helmet and golden ornaments decorated with jewels and pearls. His eyes were shaped just like lotus petals, and his graceful black eyeballs were curved like the two parts of an arched bow. Pointing to the print, Prabhupada explained that Lord Vishnu is in the causal ocean, the causal ocean, the ocean of cause. From there, the innumerable universes manifest and develop. Handing me the print, he asked me to copy only the middle portion. I accepted the print with excitement and set off to fulfill my Guru's request. In order to become better acquainted with the subject matter, I read one of the appropriate parts in Srimad Bhagavatam's first canto before going to the art store. The whole idea was magically cosmic and strangely inconceivable. Vishnu is the expansion of Krishna. Krishna expands as Karanadakashayi Vishnu, who lies down in the causal ocean and creates the aggregate material ingredients in the Mahatattva, the undifferentiated from the total material energy, through his breathing. He then expands as Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, who enters into each and every universe and lies down on the Garbhodaka ocean, at the bottom of each universe. He is also the creator and maintainer of Brahma and Shiva. Brahma becomes the engineer of the universe, and the Lord himself takes charge of maintaining it as Kshirodakashaya Vishnu. I understood that it would be a long, long while before I have a clear mental image of what all this looked like, what to speak of a true understanding of this transcendental realm. For that, I knew I would have to wait to become transcendentally situated by the mercy of Sri Guru. When I returned from purchasing the art materials, I secured the 24 inches by 32 pre-primed canvas around the wooden frame with thumbtacks. I spent the rest of the day applying 2 more layers of gesso on the canvas and sandpapering between each layer so that the final surface would not show the fabric texture. Because I still had not finished preparing the canvas, when the time came to return to the Bronx, I left all the materials on the floor of the altar room for the next day. After breakfast the next morning, when I once again went upstairs to work, Guru Maharaj told me in a soft, even voice, "Please be careful with your thumbtacks." I could feel my heart sinking, imagine what was coming next. He calmly and humbly said, "I stepped on one." I gasped, every atom of my body, mind, and intelligence in pain, and then apologized as best I could. I then went to the altar room to clean the floor. As I painted, my feelings of regret made my hands tremble, pointing out that on the original print there was an Om sign superimposed over Lord Vishnu's navel. Prabhupada told me that Om by itself, unaccompanied by any personal name, is impersonal. On a small piece of paper he wrote the name of this particular incarnation, Sri Madhava, in both Sanskrit, Devanagari, and transliterated Roman letters. You can copy the name in Sanskrit and English under the Om sign, he said. He left the room and later returned to notice that I had misspelled Madhava as Madhava. I wrote Madhava with an H after the D. I couldn't accept my mistake. "No, you wrote a H-A-H-A." Then it struck me. Oh my God, I'm arguing with my spiritual master. 2 months earlier, I had never even heard of the word Sanskrit, and he had spent his entire life immersed in it. I finally relented. "Oh yeah, you're right." "Yes," he replied. A few days later, I represented what I considered the finished painting to Prabhupada. Lord Vishnu's hand looked a bit like baseball gloves. His club sort of like an ice cream cone, and the causal ocean like a flat turquoise sky with white question marks on it. Several devotees were in his room when I arrived, and they all eagerly awaited his verdict. Although, from a technical point of view, the painting was crude, he was encouraging. Smilingly, he said, "Now can you look at this and say that is not God?" All the devotees cheered, and I, intoxicated by his words, was like a tiny baby who, praised encouragingly by her father, proudly smiles. "Yes, it is beautiful," I thought to myself. "I don't know if I can ever paint something so beautiful again, but I sure will try for the pleasure of this great personality who loves me so much." An hour later, that great personality asked me to come to his greeting room, where he gave me a handwritten list of the 24 principal Vishnu incarnations as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. Alongside each name, he had listed the positions in which each incarnation holds his four hand symbols. For example, name: lower right, upper left, lower left. Keshava: lotus, conch, disc, mace. Narayana: conch, lotus, mace, disc. Sri Madhava: mace, disc, conch, lotus. Sri Govinda: disc, mace, lotus, conch. He then asked me to make 24 paintings, one of each of these Vishnu manifestations. He said that each Vishnu form will be standing in that same causal ocean. He wanted me to send the first one to his second temple, San Francisco. Guru of the Guru. In the course of his lecture and discussions, and in his books as well, Srila Prabhupada often referred to and glorified his own spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, who, he told us, was our Parama Gurudeva, meaning Guru of our Guru, our grand spiritual master. In one case, he told us how Param Gurudev had perfectly followed Lord Chaitanya's example of humility. Each devotee would address the other as Prabhu, he explained. Officially, the custom is that the spiritual master is considered to represent the lotus feet of Supreme Lord, and therefore he is given the respect one would show to the Lord himself. At the same time, the bona fide spiritual master thinks, "I am your disciple." Our Guru Maharaj, when we offered obeisances, used to return them and say, "Dasos me, I am your servant." His Divine Grace explained that his Gurudev was the son of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who was one of the leading proponents of Krishna Bhakti in the 19th and early 20th century. Srila Prabhupada Saraswati Thakur, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada ordered his disciples to preach in the Western countries because he was continuing his father's mission of making Krishna consciousness accessible to the world. Externally, before Srila Prabhupada Saraswati Thakur and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, none of the previous saintly gurus had taken up the international aspect of Lord Chaitanya's mission. They had all written books. Their books were for the entire world, and they had preached throughout India, but none had sent disciples to other countries. And now our Guru Maharaj had been sent here by his Guru Maharaj. I was starting to feel still more strongly my connection to a most eminent spiritual family. It was a family that stretched back to great souls of the past and even back to Krishna himself. One winter day, I asked our holy master if I could paint a portrait of him. He replied that it would be more proper to first paint his Guru Maharaj. This is Vedic etiquette, he explained, and gave me a small photograph. Looking at the photo, I asked bluntly, "He is very handsome and dignified looking, but why does he have a beard? I thought all gurus were clean-shaved like you." Prabhupada smiled and said, "This picture was taken when my Guru Maharaj was observing an austerity called Chaturmasya. This is a 4-month period beginning late summer when devotees minimize bodily demands including eating, sleeping, and even shaving. You will not be able to enlarge the proportions accurately." He added, "I will show you how to use a grid." Under his direction, I drew a grid on the canvas using a soft, thin piece of charcoal. With a ruler, I measured the halfway between one end of the canvas and the other, both horizontally and vertically. I then halved those 2 halves, and then halved those 4 halves. The final result was that horizontally and vertically the canvas was divided into 8 equal parts. In other words, there were now 64 little equal-sized boxes on the canvas. With the help of a fine point maker, I did the same on the acetate sheet with which I had covered the photo of Prabhupada's Guru Maharaj. I was then able to transpose one section or box at a time. By the second day, I had completed the first layer, and in the evening, when it was time to return home, I left the painting and photograph on the newspaper covering the floor as I normally did. When I returned the next morning, I was surprised to find soft pillows under both the canvas and the small print. I smiled, recognizing this simple gesture of respect given by our Prabhupada. I decided right there and then that I would always do the same. I painted Parama Gurudev Tilak white. It didn't occur to me to paint it like Prabhupada's, which was yellowish white. Nor did I think that the color made any difference. Noticing the slight variation, Prabhupada commented, "The mark of his tilak is yellowish, not white. Also, there should be no effulgence around his head, and his garland should be bright. A bright garland is considered very auspicious." Several devotees were present in the altar room when Guru Maharaj came to see the completed painting of Param Gurudev. He looked at the painting and then at me. "You have brought me Vaikuntha," he said, clearly pleased. I was thrilled and at the same time astonished by his humility. We all looked at each other in amazement. It was he who had bringing us Vaikuntha. By now, I had learned that the pure devotee is in truth an emissary from the spiritual world and a personal associate of Krishna. He is an eternal resident of Vaikuntha, or more specifically Goloka Vrindavan, the topmost Vaikuntha planet. Not only is he giving those in the world a hint of that spiritual world through his association, he is taking anyone who was willing to follow him there. He handed me a small piece of paper and asked me to copy his handwriting words onto the bottom of the painting. It was a prayer to our Param Gurudev. Namaom Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Namine. I offer my respectful obeisances unto His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who is very dear to Lord Krishna, having taken shelter at his lotus feet. He had the painting of his Guru Maharaj hung in the temple room, and that evening spoke more about him. The common saying is, man proposes and God disposes. Therefore, a devotee never depends on himself. He never considers, I am independent. He simply depends on the supreme will of the Lord. That is devotion. Whenever we used to ask our Guru Maharaj something, is some work going to happen like that? He never said, yes, it is going to happen. Yes, we're going to do it. No, he would say, yes, if Krishna desires, it may be. Actually, that is the fact. If Krishna desires, if God desires, anything wonderful can be done. If he does not desire, whatever you may try, it will never be done. However, we used to ask our Guru Maharaj something. However, you may try, it will never be done. Now referring to the building the devotee were trying to purchase on St. Mark's Place, he added, just like we are praying to Krishna. If he desires, we will have a nice house. If he does not desire, we may remain here. It does not matter, but we shall prosecute our business, Krishna consciousness. There is nothing to stop us. In whatever condition we may be, devotional service is without any impediment. Nothing can check it in any circumstance. Ocean of eternal nectar. Srila Prabhupada's morning classes on Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya's authoritative biography, were the super exciting ending to my first year with him. This most sublime biography was written in the 17th century, he told us, by one of the Lord's foremost followers, Sri Krishna Dasa Kaviraja Goswami. He encouraged us, his newborn babies. Because you are a little advanced, I am going to read today from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Be patient as I present this. It is revolutionary, but you should just be patient. In the first few classes, he shared the history of Srila Sanatana Goswami, one of Lord Chaitanya's most important disciples. He described how Sri Sanatana came to take the Lord's shelter and then explained the teachings he received. I liked the word shelter. I'd previously known of shelter only as a place to protect ourselves from bad weather, danger, or attack, as in we took shelter for the night in an abandoned house. Now I understood the word in relation to a great transcendental personality who protects us from Maya, the delusion caused by turning away from Krishna. Since each of Prabhupada's classes led to the next, at the end of each class he left us with stirring cliffhanger statements, making us wonder what would happen the next day. In one of his classes he spoke about a main qualification of the disciple, humility, and urged us to strive for this if we want to chant Hare Krishna successfully. Sanatana Goswami very humbly fell down at the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and most humbly submitted himself as his student. What is this submission? Nicha yati nicha sangi patita abhama kuvishaya kupe padi gonainu janama. My dear sir, I have wasted my time in sense gratification. That is my qualification. I belong to the lowest caste, and my association is also the lowest type. I am fallen, and I am the lowest of all. This is my qualification. I picked up that our qualification for learning the truth is simply that we so desperately need it, and that a recognition of our disqualification becomes our qualification. In another class, he taught us how to pray. He said not to ask Krishna for liberation from suffering, rather to follow Lord Chaitanya's example of never wishing for wealth, followers, a beautiful spouse, or anything else. Instead, we would address Krishna in this way: My dear Lord, I may be put in any condition of life, but please bestow this benediction that I may not forget you. That's all. I may not forget you. Due to my forgetfulness, I am suffering so much. As he spoke, a tear fell from his eyes. His feelings of pure spiritual longing appeared obvious, and yet they remained hidden, confidential. He continued, I may achieve millions of dollars, but that does not make me satisfied. Rather, this only increases my desires, so I want more and more. There is no cessation, so my desire should not to forget Krishna. That's all. That one desire. In his December 5th lecture, he spoke about Krishna's greatness and made it clear why he was giving us these classes. Suppose I am serving at a place, I am engaged in service to a master, but I do not know how big my master is. When I understand the influence and opulence of my master, I become more devoted. I felt especially nourished by one of his analogies, and my new god siblings felt the same. Suppose there is a glass of water, he told us. I am thirsty. I want a glass of water. But I say, water, water, water. That will not quench my thirst. I must have the thin water, and then it will be able to act. But Krishna is Advaya Jnana, the absolute truth without duality. So when we hear Krishna's name, we should understand that Krishna is before us in his sound vibration. He is present before us in sound, because he is everything. Similarly, when we read the Bhagavad Gita, there is also Krishna. Therefore, we should pay respect. When we enter into the temple of Krishna, it is understood that we are in touch with Krishna directly. Everything is in relation to Krishna. In the higher stages of spiritual life, the devotee sees nothing but Krishna. 2 days later, our Divine Master made me laugh with his graphic description of my insignificance. He explained to his audience that this material creation is just an insignificant part of the spiritual world, and that our universe is only one in innumerable universes. Awesome. Then his next statement, and on this particular planet, the land of America, the United States, is still more insignificant. And in the state of New York City is still more insignificant. And in New York, this 26th Second Avenue is also insignificant. And we're sitting here, so just see how insignificant we are. But still we are claiming to be God. It was also obvious, but I needed His divine grace to show me that obvious thing. Although I got some perspective that I am at least as small as an atom, it wasn't a scary feeling, like being an atom lost in space. I felt comforting, and an opportunity to be free from the pain of false pride and false ego. Moreover, once again I was getting from his lecture that I become qualified to enter Krishna's pure service. Then my real spiritual significance would awaken. I would be able to realize that not only am I Krishna's, but that He is mine. He fully belongs to each and every one of us. I regularly attended the Chaitanya Charitamrita classes in that auspicious place for 2 weeks. Then I became ill with the flu, sneezing, coughing, draining of energy, and full of aches and pains, too sick to go anywhere. Missing the classes, my new lifeline, I was upset and frustrated during those few days that seemed like an eternity. Luckily, I recovered later in that month, ready to return to the storefront. However, I was excitedly preparing to leave the house in order to attempt the early morning kirtan. I felt compelled to turn behind me as I heard my mother's pained voice. Staring hard, she called out for the stairwell outside her bedroom. "Oi, Judy, Judy, you don't have to go. You were just so sick. God will understand." Unaware in those days of the beautiful communication tool called reflective listening, I began my reply with "but" as I continued to walk downstairs to the door. "But I want to understand God." My father, standing just next to her, the palms of his lowered hands raised as if lifting something heavy, his voice sounded as pained as her. "For crying out loud, Judy, why can't you just stay home?" Unaware of the beautiful communication tool called acknowledgement, the other person's feelings and needs, I could only reply in my mind, "I don't want to be Judy. I want to be Jadurani." All three of us looked frightened. They were anguished and frightened by the thought of my attempt to reach a realm they didn't believe existed. I was anguished and frightened by the thought of being pressured to be Judy. I didn't know how to love them and still be who I wanted to be. Although saddened that there was a disconnect between us, I tried to think about where I was going instead of where I had just been. The weather was freezing on my first day up and about, with snowdrifts that reached up to my knees in some places, but the long 1.5 hour journey to the storefront didn't bother me. I was so anxious to catch up and what I had missed. When I arrived, Srila Prabhupada was sitting on his dais, continuing his Chaitanya Charitamrita classes. My hope that he would notice my return was fulfilled. As he looked at me for a moment, he smiled broadly in his own radiance. That was enough for me to feel myself loved and in the perfect place. As usual, many visitors wandered in and out, some dropping in for a moment to satisfy their curiosity, and then all-nighters struggling in to slip in through the class and then leaving. Despite all these potential distractions, our Guru's voice remained calm, if also urgent. He truly wanted to dispel our self-defeating illusions as he gave the year's penultimate Chaitanya Charitamrita class. One part of the class especially stood out in my mind. Kuhaka means illusion. Just like here, everything is kuhaka. Everything is made of earth, water, and other temporary things you sometimes find in the storefront of a big mercantile firm. There is a nice girl, a mannequin, standing with dress. So that is kuhakam, illusion. That is illusion. Those who know, they will say, oh, it is a doll. Similarly, that it is the difference between a man in knowledge and a man in ignorance. They are accepting this material doll as reality. That is materialism. I saw the illusion all around me. My eyes could easily take in the vast horizons of buildings and skyscrapers, and the expanse of sky and clouds. My ears could hear varieties of sounds from people, cars, subways, and general city noises. I am taking all this as reality. I contemplated. Sometimes I was so excited by his words that I wanted to jump up and run through the streets calling everyone to come to hear. But that was the best of times. At other times my mind drifted to thoughts of school, fights with my family, or some insult I thought I received earlier that morning. Still, with his sweet Harikatha, his narrations of the Lord, he continued. He continued calling me back. No matter how far I stayed, he was like a magnet pulling me back. It was as if he were beckoning. Come to the Lord's abode, where there is no illusion. After each class, he went to his room for breakfast, leaving the rest of us to take ours in the temple room. As we honored prasadam, we listened to the class again as it replayed on the temple's large reel-to-reel tape recorder. This had become a regular practice in our lives. I liked this daily ritual as I was able to catch points I'd missed during the class. Food for spiritual thought. One morning in late December, the daily explosive psst resounded from the pressure cooker in the kitchen. I didn't have to look at my watch to know that it was precisely 11:55 a.m. because Kirtanananda spiced the dal, a type of pulse, with the chons, fried seasoning and spices, at exactly the same time each day. 5 minutes later, two devotees carried out a big pot of dal from the kitchen, followed by a large pot of basmati rice and another pot containing vegetables cooked Indian style, called sabji. They placed the pots on the outer room floor and filled Krishna's personal plates with small helping from each of the pots. Then one of them placed Krishna's plate on the oblong altar, along with a cup of milk and banana. Prabhupada came in, having just taken his noon bath. He offered his obeisances and began to ring the bells, reciting the prayers for offering the bhoga, foodstuffs that had not been yet offered to Krishna. I joined the other devotees in bowing down. After that sumptuous and warming lunch, Kirtanananda and I returned from the temple to the outer room and resumed our services. When Prabhupada came in and asked Kirtanananda to give me 2 glasses of hot milk every day, I looked up from my canvas and smiled, surprised. All the devotees drank a cup of hot milk sweetened with bananas every evening after the class and Kirtan. Why did he want me to get an extra glass during the day? Seeing my confused expression, he said, "All creative people require 2 glasses of milk a day. Materialists eat fish because it is supposed to be good for the brain, but that is the material brain. Milk is good for the spiritual brain. It develops the finer tissues of the brain for spiritual understanding." I was so touched by his concern. It further inspired me to put those finer brain tissues to good use. The devotees sometimes referred to the outer room as to front room, and sometimes as the sweet ballroom. For at least as long as I've been coming to the temple, it had been our Guru's practice to keep a large jar of gulab jamun sweet balls in the corner of the room near to where I painted. Whenever one batch was finished, Prabhupada would ensure that another was cooked to replace it. He now dipped a large spoon into the amber syrup, scooped out a few gulab jamuns and offered them to me as I painted. Once again I was stunned and embarrassed to be given such attention. I gratefully accepted those delicious out-of-this-world sweets. That evening, after the temple program, several of us went back upstairs. As I started to pick up the newspapers from around my painting area, and others were engaged in their services, Prabhupada motioned to the sweet ball jar. "We are not non-violent," he said. "We have our ISKCON bullets, and they will destroy the Maya illusion of the conditioned souls." "Perfect description," Hayagriva said aside. They are just like bullets. As soon as you bite into them, they explode in your mouth. That evening, along with our milk and bananas, we all honored the ISKCON bullets drenched in their sweet juice. Okay, we're gonna stop for now because I still wanna listen to some of the Jahnavi kirtans tonight. I still have like 10 minutes to listen to her, and the rest I will listen in the recording. So, good night to all of you. Thank you, and Hare Krishna.